So this is going to be my obligatory oil change video. There's a million videos out there on how to change your own oil, so I'm not going to show too much in depth. I'm just going to show you my take on it and how I do it. I probably do it a little bit differently than most people do it because I like to torque the oil filter, stuff like that. As some of you may know, I'm very religious with the torque wrench, so I will show you how I do that. So the materials and tools you will need are oil filter wrench with the ratchet, torque wrench, OEM oil filter, funnel, oil, and something to catch the oil. So I don't need any tools to take off the oil pan drain plug because I use a Fumoto quick drain valve. I'll show you guys that in a little bit. For the oil filter wrench, this is a 3/8 inch oil filter wrench, so it can be attached to a ratchet as well as a torque wrench. Basically, all you gotta do is take your filter to an auto parts store like AutoZone or O'Reilly's and then find which one fits. I don't remember the exact dimensions on it, but these little straight portions on the top to allow you to put tooling around it are called flutes. For the oil filter, I only use the OEM oil filter. Here's the part number if you guys are wondering. I usually just buy these in bulk from Amazon. They're pretty cheap. And the OEM oil filter is probably the best oil filter you can use for this. So just play it safe and use the OEM one. The torque wrench, I'll show you guys later. The funnel, you can use pretty much any kind of funnel. For oil, I use Rotella T6. This is the oil that I have had the most success with. I have absolutely no problems with it. My tuner approves of it. So you guys can use whatever oil you want to use. Everyone has their own opinions on oil. Just make sure you do your research and whatever you end up using works for you. In Hawaii, we actually do not use oil pans and oil recycling centers. We actually just use these boxes, like it's filled with paper shavings. So what'll happen is you'll drain the oil into here. The paper will absorb the oil. You wrap this package up and then you just throw it in the trash, just like regular trash. So that's how we're gonna get rid of our old oil. Alright, so here's our Fumoto quick drain valve. I'm actually using a different one than what you would normally use on this car. I'm using a two-piece one with this 90-degree fitting so that it can be rotated in whatever direction you need it to point. When I used the one-piece one with the Killer Bee headers, I actually had issues with the valve body running into the header here and basically just getting stuck and denting the header. So that's why I ended up converting to this one, the two-piece one. So I was able to position the valve body over here instead of against the header. And then that's what allowed me to retain the clearance and still be able to run a quick drain, even though I'm running these headers, which are considerably larger than the stock ones. So some people are sketched out about these quick drain valves because they're super easy to open by hand. But the thing is, this is not going to open unless you want it to. So the lever fits into this detent here and it's spring loaded. This oil valve is definitely not the closest thing on the car to the ground. So it would be virtually impossible to hit this valve against the ground. And it's also virtually impossible for this lever to be inadvertently operated. So basically when you want to do it by hand, you just push it out of this detent and then you rotate it over and then it opens this little ball valve inside, and that's what allows all the oil to drain out. Learning and knowing how to change your own oil is important when it comes to maintenance as well as saving money and stuff for your car. I also think it's a federal law and you can't consider yourself a man unless you know how to change your own oil. But all jokes aside, we're going to go ahead and loosen our oil cap here. For those of you wondering, this is a custom oil cap that was made by my buddy Matt. He owns a company called Illuminati. So if you guys want a cool custom oil cap or something like that, then go ahead and hit him up. But we're going to open this and then kind of set this over. This is going to allow an air passage for the oil to drain most effectively. If you think of the concept of shotgunning a beer and opening the pop tab before you shotgun it, this is basically the same concept. So we are going to go ahead and get our box or whatever you're using to catch your oil into position. Go ahead and open that valve. And there goes our oil. So while the oil is draining underneath, this is the part where I like to take my oil filter wrench, put it on the oil filter, and we're going to go ahead and remove our old oil filter. Once the oil filter is removed, I like to go in here and clean up all this dust and dirt that kind of builds up on the outside of the oil filter. Once you have that cleaned up, you're going to go ahead and install your new oil filter. But before you install your new oil filter, what you need to do is take a little bit of oil and spread it around this gasket to allow for lubrication. Because what happens is once you go to tighten this down and do the final torque to it, you don't want this O-ring gasket to be getting pinched or ripped or anything like that. So when it comes to the final tightening of this, having the lubrication on the gasket or O-ring, whatever you want to call it, is what's going to allow this to seal properly. So now we're going to go ahead and torque this new oil filter to 10 foot-pounds of torque. I have this super precise CDI torque wrench. This is what I use for any torque values that are under 20 foot-pounds, but this one is measured in inch-pounds. So whenever you need to convert a torque spec from foot-pounds to inch-pounds, all you have to do is multiply it by 12 because there's 12 inches in a foot. So 12 times 10 is 120. We're going to set the torque wrench to 120 inch-pounds, and then we're going to go ahead and torque this oil filter. So now that our oil filter is torqued down, all we have to do is wait for the last of the oil to drain out. And then we're going to go ahead and close that valve, attach our funnel into the oil fill spot, and then we're going to add 5.4 quarts. Actually, we're going to add 5.5. So when you do an oil change with an oil filter change, the factory service manual calls for a 5.4 quart oil refill, and I do 5.5 just because my car likes to burn a lot of oil. It's okay to have a little bit above what the recommended value is, and burning oil is just what makes a Subaru a Subaru. Alright, the oil has finished draining. We closed our valve. Here's all the oil right here. We didn't make a mess, and we didn't lose a single drop of oil. We didn't drop any on the ground or anything. So it was definitely a perfect oil change. So when it comes to refilling and measuring how much oil you need to put back in, I start with 1 full gallon. So this is a brand new gallon. 1 gallon has 4 quarts. If you didn't know that, you should probably reevaluate your life. So what I do is take this, fill the 4 quarts up, then using these measurements on the side, I will take another container, refill this to 1.5 quarts, and I'll put the last of the oil in, and then you'll be good to go. Alright, so we added our 5.5 quarts of oil. We put our oil cap back on. If you guys did it right, you'll start the car up and it'll be just fine. If you guys did it wrong, then your engine's probably going to blow up, and that's your problem.